Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Megan Grubner. With us, as always, to talk all things markets is University of Missouri Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Megan.
All right, as we get things started this week, obviously supply and demand was the biggest report probably and the biggest thing for us to talk about. But let's start and recap what happened this week in the markets.
Yeah, Megan, it's nice to be able to do this week because I think this is the first time in weeks that we get to talk about positive things across the board. It's been a long time. So we'll take this good week as we get it. Cash cattle this week, I'm going to call them nearly $3.25 higher this week. Those feeder cattle auctions were anywhere from steady to $3 higher on the week. The October live cattle futures contract was up $3.60 this week. And that September feeder cattle futures contract was up $1.40. That's actually a pretty good growth given that we've seen September corn futures are up nearly 17 cents as well. So pretty good news on the futures market for cattle. Choice box beef was $5.35 higher this week. We've been on quite a good roll of some higher prices in terms of choice box beef, and I think that's helped cattle prices. I remind us we're still nearly $21 below year-ago levels on that choice box beef price. On the hog side of the equation, cash barrels and gilts about 50 cents higher this week. And the October lean hog futures contract closed up $2 for the week. Pork cutout value was also up a little more than $4 this week. So pretty good news when we look at those prices.
It really has been quite some time since we've been able to talk about everything across the board looking positive or those numbers sitting in the black. As we talk about that, what are some of the biggest drivers that are pushing our prices higher right now?
So I think, we're finding some stability in markets that has helped us move off the lows. Cattle in particular, we had lofty choice box beef prices that were crashing pretty hard. I think we feel like we've maybe found a bottom there and we have some strength going forward. Maybe that's related to a little stronger consumer demand than we anticipated. But generally, I just think markets have got a little more comfortable in what's an otherwise chaotic year.
Chaos is something that I think we're going to take through this last quarter as we head into there as well. Something else that's continuing to see some stabilization and improvement ongoing is the slaughter picture. And this week was another week where we saw hog slaughter numbers increase again.
Yeah, that's right. If you look at hog slaughter, USDA is estimating for this week 2.565 million head of hogs will be slaughtered. That's a little more than 1% above where we were a week ago, 3% above where we were a year ago. Now, I just remind us that 3% higher than a year ago, that's 74,000 head. And when you think about, we likely had 1 to 2 to 3 million head of hogs backed up. It takes a long time to get yourself back out of that hole when you're doing it 74,000 head at a crack at best. On the cattle side, but better news this week in terms of cattle slaughter, up 7,000 head from a week ago. That's 1.1% higher. USDA estimating a 640,000 head run for the week. Cattle slaughter still trailing year-ago levels by about 2% for same week a year ago.
Big report this week, supply and demand. And I think obviously we'll talk a little bit on the livestock side of things, but on the grain side of things, is it kind of, I don't want to say a throwaway report, but does it get negated a little bit with those storms that move through Iowa and parts of Illinois, causing some pretty significant damage, especially in Iowa?
Yeah, that seems to be a little bit of what we see on the crop side. And certainly if you've seen markets on especially corn move here in the last day or two, we're seeing some pretty strong moves in corn futures, where I think folks are starting to bid in maybe a little shorter crop than what USDA would have expected. I remind us, it's not only the corn crop that's in trouble in states like Iowa, but the storage facilities are also going to be a problem, it looks like to me, from the pictures that I've seen coming in from around the country. Even if that Iowa crop gets cut quite a bit, I still think we're going to have a fairly large crop and we need a lot of storage. So we're going to have some competing things that I think happened out of that crop damage as well. But You're correct from a WASI perspective. I kind of look and I go, we didn't get the kind of big changes that we've been seeing, at least out of USDA for the livestock side of the report.
So let's talk a little bit and get into those numbers a little bit. Not a ton of changes, as you mentioned, but maybe some nuggets to take away and to glean from it.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things, some of the bigger changes on the supply side that stick out to me. Chicken net exports, USDA has lowered their 2020 estimate over the last month by 154 million pounds. They reduced their pork production estimate for 2020 by 179 million pounds. Also there embedded is some stronger beef imports. So beef net exports being reduced to 116 million pounds for 2020 has a lot to do with increased imports. We all know that story, as it's been pretty strong for lean beef to come in to mix to make more ground beef products here in the U.S. So we're seeing USDA make that adjustment higher on beef imports as well.
I think the big takeaway for me for this report for me is trade. I mean, like, we're seeing another increase in production for next year, and we really need to make sure markets are buttoned up and relationships are strong heading into another year.
Yeah, if you look at the sum of beef, pork, and chicken net exports, all right, so USDA is currently saying for 2020, we're going to be at about a 13.5 billion pound net exports of those products. But for 2021, they're suggesting a 13.9 billion pound number. So only 400 or 500 million pounds more net exports of meat products in 2021. Yet they're up more than a billion pounds in, it's more like 1.4 billion pounds in overall meat production in 2021. So the story that we've been on in 2020 continues in 2021, according to USDA. More supplies. We need strong export markets if we want to try to keep prices at reasonable levels.
All right. Speaking of prices, retail prices, some changes as we look from July to August. And I think that that's some good news, at least on the consumer side of things, especially with where the economy is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think beef is the one that jumps out. Beef's the one that took the big jump. If we looked back for a second, from April to May, we went from $6.44 a pound on the choice retail price to $7.58. When we look at the July numbers now, we actually see them coming in at $6.84. So down about 72 cents from where we were back in June, and 75 cents below where we were at the peak in May. So lower beef prices. Hopefully that helps us move more beef products on domestic markets. A good signal, and I hope that continues. I expect that to continue as we look for the next couple of months with hopefully some lower beef prices. On the pork side, we also are lower. The June pork retail price was $4.25. USDA is now telling us that for July we're at $4.18, so down about 7 cents on the retail pork price. Now, I remind us that pork retail prices didn't take the same jump that beef did, so we are getting a decline. It's a lot less than beef, but we also saw a much smaller increase in those pork prices.
As we talk about consumers and retail prices, consumer sentiment improved slightly heading into August.
Yeah, that's right. We got a 0.4% increase in that overall index of consumer sentiment. So a little bit of help. I remind us that's still nearly 19% below where we were a year ago at this time. The current situation index was actually for preliminary for August down slightly, down 0.4%, but the index of expectations showed some improvement, up 0.9% relative to July. So let's hope that those expectations turn into reality as we look over the next few months.
That's really it for us this week. I think, as always, we talk about trade and demand, and those are things that we'll get to continue to talk about week after week. As we head into next week, what are some of the big reports that we're watching?
Yeah, so 2 big reports next week for us on the monthly side. We'll get livestock slaughter out on Thursday, and then we'll finish next week with another cattle on feed report. Give us some indication of what's going to happen on cattle markets as we get in the latter part of 2020.
All right, Scott, good to see you. Have a great weekend. Stay cool.
Yeah,
pretty hot out there too, isn't it?
It is. You do the same, Megan.
All right. So our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box every Saturday morning. Visit our website, brownfieldagnews.com. You can click subscribe. You can also submit questions and comments if you have those. And for all of the really great Brownfield podcasts, make sure to visit brownfieldagnews.com/podcast. Have a great weekend. I'm Megan Grebner for Brownfield.